When I started reading this passage, I thought the weirdest thing about it was the fact that in chapter 10, you have a guy called Tolla, whose dad is called Pua, whose dad is called Dodo. And I just thought, can you imagine having a name like that? Dodo. But anyway, as I read on, I began to think the strangest thing about this passage is the thing that you're all thinking about as well, which is what the heck is happening at the end of it, where this guy Jephthah makes a vow to kill whoever comes out of his house. His little girl comes out of his house, and so he ends up putting her to death. How can that be right? What do we make of what's going on in this passage? And the first thing that I want to say on this is that it isn't right. It's actually wrong that he's doing this. And we can sometimes think, oh yeah, well it says it in the Bible that he does it, and therefore that makes it right. The Bible's not full only of God's actions, is also full of humanity's actions and the things that we think and the things that we do, and they're not always right. Just like when you read a psalm and the guy who's singing the psalm is saying, oh, I wish you'd just go and put all these people to death and smash their babies' heads off rocks and things like that, which he does say in the psalms. That doesn't mean that God's going to do it or that he thinks that's right. That's somebody having a bit of a moment and they're venting what they think towards God. And here, with Jephthah's vow, one of the things that we have to pick up on is it's a completely unnecessary vow that he makes. You know, we've already read story after story in the book of Judges of how God has delivered Israel. In not a single one of those stories has he demanded that someone does anything like this. Jephthah, you get the sense that he's a bit of a bargainer, and so when they come to him and they say, look, will you be the ruler over us? He says, well, you know, you didn't want me around, and should I come? And I'll only come on these conditions. And he's a bit of a dealer, and he makes agreements. He says, okay, well, on this basis, I'll come. And then here, the great bargainer overplays his hand, and he offers God this deal that God hasn't requested, and he says, look, if you deliver Israel, then I will put to death, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house. That's a stupid thing to say. What's going to come out of your house if it's not your dog? It's going to be a servant, or it's going to be someone, isn't it? And in the end, it's his daughter. So he should never have made that vow in the first place. It was putting everybody in his house at risk. And then the second thing that he did wrong, as far as I can tell, is that he actually fulfilled his vow. He shouldn't have made this rash promise in the first place to do something that was effectively almost certainly going to be evil. I shouldn't make a rash vow to commit adultery. And if I do make a rash vow to commit adultery, or I make a rash vow to rob somewhere or something like that, making that vow in itself is a sin. But then I sin even more if I fulfill the vow. The fact that I've made the promise does not make the criminal act right. The fact that I've promised to do it doesn't make it okay. Jephthah should not have made this vow, and he shouldn't have killed his daughter. In the situation with Abraham and Isaac, which is another moment where God actually requests that, in the end God speaks and he stops it. Why does he not stop it here? I don't know. I wonder if it's his anger, his silence, that Jephthah would even go ahead and do this. Sometimes that's how God displays his anger, with his absence and his silence. But either way, Jephthah is completely in the wrong, and we should not do as he did.